fade out the music. You can't just turn it off. You have to fade it out. Hello, everyone. I hope you are all having an amazing Tuesday. We are so happy that you were able to join us today for this next edition of our Data Products webinar series. Based on our first successful data products overview webinar in July, and from all the client feedback we received, we decided to launch a full webinar series of data products focusing on specific use cases. Today, we will be covering frustration score, and in our upcoming webinars, we're going to be going over field analytics, omni-channel attribution, 360-degree behavioral analytics, and live signals. So make sure you join us for every single one, because we're going to be covering a lot of really great information. Now, before we move on to our speakers, we are going to be launching a poll. You can go ahead and launch that poll, Jack. Now, we are looking for honest feedback, and we would love to know if you'd be willing to leave us a review. So please respond to that poll. We're going to give you a little bit of time to respond, but just to let you know about reviews, we always want to know how we are doing, and we can't do that if we don't have your feedback. So please leave us reviews as often as you can, so that we can know exactly how to update what we're doing and provide better customer service to you all around. Thank you so much. It looks like we had a lot of replies. Thank you so much for everyone who participated in this poll. So we are going to move on to the next section. Today, we are going to have Jason Miller, our VP of Worldwide Field Innovations, who's going to be going over frustration score. And we also have John Burke, who's going to be joining us from UBIX, one of our partners. Jason has over 25 years in the technology space. He's previously held positions such as Akamai's chief strategist of e-commerce, and he spent 15 years plus as chief technology officer for Motorcycle Superstore. So he has a lot of experience and a lot of great information to share with you. So without further ado, I'm going to pass this over to Jason so that he can take you guys on this journey.
Great. I'm going to kill this video for the presentation here, and I will share my screen. So I know not everyone on this call got to see the last presentation where we introduced you to the data products. So I'm going to start off with just a quick recap of what the data products are and a couple of highlights of new things that have come out even since the last presentation last month. So for those of you not familiar, everything we're going to talk about is the base starter is the raw data export. And this is the very granular data that you can get out of the system that actually builds a lot of the dashboards and the things you see in the CS application. So what type of data is in the raw data export? Well, it was 73 page level data points, but now it's 78. We just recently added the speed analysis data. So this is cumulative layout shift, first contentful paint, first input delay, largest contentful paint, and time to first byte. I'm really excited about adding this in there because it gives us a whole lot of new use cases to do with the raw data, including using this data to match up with the frustration data and see how those particular speed things are affecting those frustration points. So I think we'll be able to draw some interesting correlations there. But in addition to speed analysis, we also have all the events, the click, tap, scroll, hovers. So very rich data set. And I don't want to spend a lot of time. I just wanted to recap for everyone. And obviously the use cases are to put this into your BI tool, use it with your Snowflake or UBIX or something to leverage all your other third-party data and match it up with the CS data. And it also gives you the ability, once you export it, to keep this data for as long as you like. So that brings us to frustration score export, the thing everyone's here for today. And so quick recap from yesterday, frustration score is based on a range from 0 to 100%. based off of the different identifiers that we have here to actually show you which elements define the different frustration, whether it's rage clicking, excessive scrolling. The thing I really like about, and I pointed out in the last webinar with frustration score, is not only do you have the ability to get our score, but you have the ability to get all the individual elements that went into making up that score, so that you can actually build your own kind of scoring metrics around it for different things that may be more important to you based on how your page flows are or the type of design you're working towards. One example is certain types of elements may cause what looks like frustration, say a carousel in a e-commerce page where there's a lot of clicking, but a lot of clicking may be necessary. I'll have an interesting highlight on that later, as will John when he talks about the different things that we can do with frustration score and modeling as you go forward. So that's kind of the highlight there. And we went over this in the last week. Obviously this extends the raw data export. So you add this on there, you have all the CSIDs. So not only can you do this at a page view level, this comes out either at a granular level at a page view level, you can actually build sessions out of it based on matching up that customer's ID within the system with the raw data export. And the last one we spoke about was live signals. And this is where you get into the ability to do real-time personalization, do real-time fraud detection, and things like that. So what we've done here is we've taken some of the top elements from these signals and added them into a script so that it can push this to any endpoint API. So whether you want to trigger something based on rage clicking or excessive scrolling, maybe you want to do a pop a chat modal, or if you're interested in potentially fraudulent elements of filling out a form, we have the excessive pacing and reloading. And for those of you who saw the brief overview of field analytics last webinar, we got into a little bit about that, how you can model some fraud out of that, and that will be in our next webinar. And then the last one there, the ad blocking, being able to know if a customer could actually see all the elements that were supposed to be on the page. If a misconfigured ad blocker is blocking your call to action, they may not have even seen what you expected them to see. And so with this, just think of any of your other third-party data points that you want to push it out to. I showed an example in the last webinar with Telium, and we were directly integrated with a Telium tag manager. At a click of a button, you could send this data to any other tag that resides on the Telium platform. Same thing goes with, sending it to Qualtrics. Maybe you want to signal a voice of customer, or Optimizely, you want to signal a test or a different call to action because someone's doing, scrolling up and down the page and can't find the call to action to go to the next stage. So lots of different use cases around this. I know this is something that John at UBIX is really interested in working on, pushing real time into UBIX for another use cases. I won't steal his thunder. I know he wants to talk about that a little bit. But that's kind of my 5-minute recap. I can pause there if there's any questions. You can put them in the chat. Someone will have to tell me if they're in the chat because in this screen sharing mode, I can't see them.
I'll let you know when those questions come up, Jason.
Great, thank you. So what I wanted to do next, and something we really didn't do, is talk about actually seeing these in action, some real use cases that we've quantified, and exposing some of you to the new features within the product that you can also think of ways of exporting this data into your other data lakes and adding additional value to it. So for those not familiar with it, you can actually see the frustration score in the session replay. This gives you the ability to sort and filter based on which ones have the highest numbers. You can see this at the URL level or the session score level. And like we said in the raw data export with frustration score, you can actually see all the elements. Within the product, you can also see all the elements that are causing that frustration for the user. So then you can start mapping those to which ones are more important and providing more insights. So an interesting example we have here, and this is actually pretty common across a lot of customers, is frustration at the shipping and billing page. And we talked about this a little bit with field analytics, but sometimes JavaScript errors cause issues where person has filled the form out incomplete, or they used autocomplete and it put something in somewhere it didn't belong, and they continue to try to push the submit button and they're unable to pass a submit button. So there's a lot of frustration there. And we can tag that in both frustration score from rage clicking multi-click button, or like we talked about in the field analytics one, actually looking for failed submits on that page flow. So these are like these quick aha moments where you can catch something seems simple, seems like the form is simple, but they're getting stuck at the final stage of trying to check out. This one I've actually experienced myself on friction with the address field input. So the customer goes in, they fill out their address. Oftentimes what you have on these address verifications is it's going to a third-party API that's saying, hey, this address isn't valid. And so it keeps kicking the user back even though the address is valid. Could be something like misconfigured API, could be something along the lines of they haven't put the zip code in yet, it's not matching up. But this causes a lot of frustration for the user and they get stuck here. So being able to take that error message and know that that's where it's causing it, and then go troubleshoot that within the replay, you can figure out if it's your address verification API, or if the user is actually putting in an address that isn't validating, and figure out why so that you can help that customer. So another one that could be related to JavaScript errors, misconfigured browsers, is the users having frustrations trying to do something that seems really common and straightforward, which is I want to take something out of my shopping cart. We use the rage click here and these fast clicks on the button, and the button's not firing, the item's not getting removed from their cart, they can't proceed. So they're blocked right here. So if you think about this from a page flow, especially if this is maybe like in this example, it's a mobile, and you're trying to figure out where they're getting caught, this gives you the exact drop in. You see the rage clicks, you see where they're having the problem, and then take this to engineering and say, hey, there's a problem with maybe this browser version, can't remove the item from the cart, blocking the user from going. And then the other thing is, then you can go quantify this. Obviously, we won't get too deep into quantification because we're just talking about frustration today, but you go quantify how many times this is happening, and then take that to your tech team to help validate why we need to prioritize moving this up the stack. On more of a CX using, not an error so much, but a challenge here was this website bracelet builder. So if you look at the bracelet builder, you can see that users are having high frustration because they're trying to use the builder. But on the desktop, they can't really scroll through the actual options because of the way it's side scrolling. So more than likely, the page is more designed for a mobile device where people are going to swipe, and they didn't make an easy way or an intuitive way to click. So by highlighting that frustration, then you can go validate how many of these times is this happening and who should actually be going in and fixing this user error, or not user error, but code error in this case, So once again, and if you can see down here to the right, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but you can actually watch this as you go through the session replay as their frustration is building and all the elements that are causing this frustration in the side panel. Really great use case for that. And another one we've talked about is combining session level frustration with like NPS or voice of customer. So the ability for the teams that are monitoring NPS to actually know why those scores are having issues compared to the users who aren't having the issues. You can look at the segment who had a post-purchase rating that was low and see that those frustration scores had highly frictional sessions, showing the user struggling with whatever it was, in this case, resetting the password and looping. These kind of things help you identify why, to answer the question of why. And you don't really get that when you're just looking at quantitative analytics, but when you can actually look at those frustration scores, pick that segment of users, go watch the replay, then you know what needs to be fixed. And in this case, it was a failed password reset. So we'll talk about this a little bit in John's session, but once you can actually quantify the impact of that, you can go to your tech team, show them how much money you're going to save by fixing this particular issue, and simplifying this password creation process. I always love to use the example of sometimes we've gotten so complex with the password creation process that if you don't have LastPass or something installed, you can't even really create a password because the combinations get so funky. So simplifying the create the process, simplifying the reset the process. This was a projected 8K savings a month. So those were kind of a couple use cases that we didn't highlight last time. And then what I wanted to do is talk about a few of the things that are coming and how those affect the data export and how they're going to extend the abilities that we have with the frustration score, both in the platform and in the export.
And Jason, quick, there's a question in the chat from Kathy. Can you push real-time data to Adobe Target as well? You mentioned Optimizely specifically.
So we have Optimizely on there because we've done tests with them and integrated it. We do have an integration with Adobe, and as long as they have an endpoint that can accept it, I don't know off the top of my head if there's a pre-built Adobe one, but it is something we can do. That might be a better question I need to take back to the integration team and see if they have an already baked click the button Adobe one or not. But I know we do have an integration with Adobe for all the other stuff Adobe, so there would be no reason we wouldn't have that.
Thank you, Jason.
So a couple of kind of highlights of things that are coming. The CS enrichment API. So this is the idea that you have offline data or data that's not available in that HTTP page flow that Contentsquare monitors that you want to actually push back into Contentsquare. So like it says on there, this could be, call center data, any offline events. Just to give you a few examples, maybe you have people applying for credit or checkout and you think it's fraudulent. We can give you fraud signals, but you don't actually have a segment of fraud because the fraud happens after the transaction is complete. So you identify it as fraud after the transaction is complete. Well, with the enrichment API, you can actually push that data back into the system to be able to segment and say, what were the behaviors of these ones that we did identify as fraud compared to the others that were not. We had another customer that had a really interesting use case, and they're a financial firm and they're taking home loans and things like that, and so there's certain levels of income that needed to be there and things like that, and they wanted to see and segment those users based on if they got approved at the end or did not get approved, and then they could go look at that behavior. Some of the behavior we saw when we looked at that is actually people going through the forms and changing their actual income levels multiple times while submitting it, trying to figure out what their income level needed to be to get approved for what they're trying to get approved for. So a lot of different use cases. If you wanted to try to do online and offline, so if you have a brick and mortar store, you have online customers, you can map those flows and actually start connecting your online and offline data for those customers. One of our big retailers was working on that. Another thing that's coming is we talked about the example of a homepage slider causing a lot of clicks, might get identified as a rage click when it's really not. So the context of the behavior is going to start mattering when we do reference zone tagging, so that the system will actually start identifying things that should have a high number of clicks or a certain type of interaction, so that you don't see those popping up as high frustration scores if they're actually intended that way, or things that shouldn't, the opposite way, shouldn't have high rage clicks, that we can then highlight, oh, well, this is really out of band because the average for this zone is much lower. So this is going to be really interesting to see how customers can consume this when we do the reference zone tagging. And then to continually add value to CS Insights, the frustration score, and the data export, we're also working on a promo code struggle concept based on that reference zone tagging. So being able to identify different types of struggles. So there's a different type of struggle if they go to the checkout page and they just keep entering different promo codes. I mean, sometimes that's probably like people searching on the web trying to find any promo code that works. But other times it can be misconfigured marketing emails where they send something out and the code actually doesn't work, or something along those lines. And then the last thing there is actually highlighting API errors and how they correlate with frustration. And those are both coming later in the second half of the year. And lastly, working on highlighting different levels of granularity here. So being able to look at the frustration score across different URLs, pages, website levels, all these different places where we can aggregate it. And I want to point out, like, you can write code to do some of this within the frustration score now when you couple that with the raw data export, but this is going to extend that ability even further. Also highlighting, average weighted frustration score for a page. And that's the one thing I probably didn't highlight again earlier when I was doing the quick recap. Every page is going to have some level of frustration on it, but there's going to be the median point of what's the expected frustration to complete whatever the objective of the page is. So being able to look at that baseline and figure out where your outliers are and how you need to go fix those particular types of customer segments, and then to quantify that is where you really get the extra value there. And that's kind of my highlights on frustration. I don't want to take up all of John's time. I will turn it over to you, John, if you're ready.
Hang on 1 second. Hello, and thank you, Jason. Thank you, Alexander. And pleasure to meet all of you, and look forward to our discussion today. I'm John Burke. I'm the chairman and CEO of UBIX. And, we have a very active and great partnership with our partners here at Contentsquare, and we're excited to be talking about frustration scoring and advanced analytics today. Just as a recap, similar to what Jason did in our last series, UBIX is the only no-code end-to-end advanced analytics platform for business users, right? And UBIX stands for ubiquitous, right? Where our goal is to really democratize AI, and our focus is, building a product for the curious, right? The people that like to solve problems and provide actionable insights and enable rapid innovation within their enterprise. And so that's the really focus of UBIX. And, the different use cases we have here within Contentsquare really start with some key data that we get from Contentsquare. And so Jason talked about, flows and fields and forms and raw data export and live signals and field analytics and frustration scoring. And all of those are easily accessible within UBIX. And one of the things I really want to highlight here is that raw data export is really a great, rich data set, right? And so UBIX uses that extensively, and it gives you a long history of data. It allows you to create kind of a long track record of data within UBIX that can be used for delivering really critical insights, as well as training models that can be productionized within UBIX and actually inside of that production environment have live signals communicate to it. So you can have near real-time responsiveness around certain things that we're seeing within the profiles of that live signal, right? So UBIX not only has like the application side of things that allows you for that data discovery and on top of Contentsquare data, but also the production environment to feed those applications, as well as feed the real-time signals to bring those things to life, right? And allow you to take action in stream, right? Which is a game-changing innovation for many companies. And so inside of most models, right, within UBIX and around various use cases, we're combining both the Contentsquare data with other data sources. Whether you're looking at additional, analytics products or your CRM or ERP system or other transactional systems, as well as your social media and social channels, right? Because a lot of those are addition data or confirming amounts of data that allow you to build more and more sophisticated models. And that is all fed into, our overall, data analytics structure inside of our data space product. And then model space allows you to innovate and solve these problems. One of the great things about, as a recap here, is model spaces also has model space library that allows you to have reusable components, such as what we call functions. So all of these complex algorithms out there in the world, whether you're doing data shaping techniques, data transformations, or you're actually building a training set or training a model, tuning a model, doing an ensemble of that model, etc. Right? All of those things are done in model space, but they're done in a no-code fashion. And functions allow you to do that in a no-code fashion. It doesn't compromise complexity. All those same complexities are there in like fine-tuning and building a very sophisticated solution. But in addition to those reusable components for both, widget layouts, widgets, and functions, you also have, the model space library. And model space library contains the pre-built solutions. So things that we talk about today are out of the box through our partnership with Contentsquare that allow you to get up and running quickly around anything that we're talking here in this series. And so it allows you the speed to innovation, no long drawn out projects. We can get up and running very quickly with any new customer to take advantage of these benefits. And looking at traffic models and frustration scoring. So UBIX, you can look at these are a bit of an eye chart here, but the UBIX, the machine model, understands where traffic came from, where it went throughout the site, what are the most common paths, what are the most least common paths, what are the most effective paths. And so when you break it down, but what we can see just in this quick little picture here is you can see a much more dense set and more complicated set of pathways because it includes bot traffic, right? And there's both good bots and bad bots, etc. But most of you are all trying to reach real customers, real humans. And so removing those bots allows you a much more cleaner view of your flows, right? We also provide all the analytics around bot traffic as well, because that's an important segment to understand from your resources and what things are hitting your website. But, to see a clean picture and have that pure traffic, to understand metrics and everything like that, to actually drive those different outcomes. And, and what you see when you dissect that pure traffic, you see various different customer segments, and I'll share a few of those examples as we walk through this presentation, but also success profiling and abandonment profiling and intelligent analysis of frustration scoring. And so in each one of those pathways, you have both success that ends in the eventual outcome that you're trying to drive, but you also have abandonment. And at various stages of that level of abandonment, you have learned something new, right? The huge opportunities to turn that around, to get a higher conversion rate, et cetera. We also have the advanced frustration scoring analytics, right? So if you look at all these different pieces that Jason was talking about, as far as engagement duration, typing duration, struggle in field, hesitation time, and bot detection, all of these also, and when we get into the next series around, just to kind of not to get too ahead of myself, but in the next series around field analytics, we're also going to be talking about fraud scoring, right? Which is a very interesting thing that, that also leverages this important data, because you can tell a lot about what's going on, right? And understanding that is specific to your website, right? Not using benchmarks or other things like that out there in the world, but very focused in on what is normal within your website around different fields, etc. Right? And so, we'll talk a little bit about the context of those fields and how something that could be high frustration could infer some additional benefits and create a different customer segment that I'll talk about here in a second. And so success metrics and layers of abandonment, right? So you look at these different flows and you can see to the far right, kind of what resulted in success. And both, kind of what came to that last period of, or the last page of actually driving to a potential outcome. But there's only a smaller percentage that actually resulted in that conversion. And so within UBIX, we provide a detailed understanding of all traffic and the origin and navigation resulting in those successful conversions. We're always observing, right? And so Contentsquare has such rich data sets within what is going on, not only from page to page, but inside that page, right? So truly understanding those observations around what is causing things to deviate from the normal flow pattern of what we're trying to achieve, as well as really understanding abandonment metrics, right? So you have a lot of stuff that you can see in session replay, but there's a lot of other things that we can show purely from a quantitative perspective to actually go through and understand exactly what is going on within that page and offer up those additional conclusions that allow you to enhance or improve your outcomes. And so success metrics and frustration struggle, right? So some of the things that Jason talks about, like if you look at some of these things around frustration scoring, you can see certain fields that when you overlay within our system kind of the context of what that question is being asked, because a big part of the struggle could be an inference that you can determine from what that customer is like, right? And so in an example for like a consumer lender, in a customer of ours, that we see a lot of frustration around income level and social security number, et cetera, right? And what we have found out is that with other confirming data is that we can actually infer from how, because there's a certain group of the population that has within this customer that has no problem entering in their income level, their social security number, et cetera. And there's been a correlation between those people that are we call them like a confident applicant, right? And so that confident applicant can sail through on a process and even affect downline processes, because they saw that within that, what we're seeing in the web information, that this person has a higher likelihood of meeting the criteria for approval of that loan, right? And so it allows you to prioritize or queue things, focus on those outcomes, versus other things that you see within the frustration scoring of how they're interacting with those different fields, maybe multiple entries, retrying an income level, jumping between different programs, things that show you the normal hesitancy around someone's failure to commit to that buy or failure to commit to that application, right? And so there's a lot of really cool things that you see that is not just about like a UI or UX, right? Jason covered off on those extensively, but that when you layer in the context of the question they are asking, you can infer a lot more about the customer. And then with other confirming data, train a model to understand that this customer is a very high percentage of them will likely be able to complete the process, right? And so higher eventual success. And looking at duration metrics, right? This is an important piece around, frustration scoring as a KPI, right? And then looking at kind of how this combined with NPS and looking at ways to really understand, how you can, improve the overall effectiveness of your website. But it's also very customized to you as a website, understanding exactly what those max and averages are around duration metrics really allow you to understand kind of where there's lost opportunities, but also overall kind of, I'll talk about here in a second about how that combined with other data and support data, et cetera, along with NPS can give you a real good glimpse into how well you're servicing your customers online. And then metric forecasting. This is something that I really, being a former public company CFO and COO, forecasting, right, and simulations, right. Some of the things that we've done across a number of different industries is boiling down and understanding these key metrics, right, and understanding the correlation between metrics. And that's an extremely important thing to understand in order to drive simulations and understand the goal of what we're trying to achieve, right? So just from a standpoint of forecasting, based on the rich set of data we get from raw data export, allows us to build very predictable models based on the current trend of what's going on within the business to see what the trend line is and to allow you to see if that is interacting with the goals of your organization, right? And then if not, being able to simulate those metrics to understand if I change this dial here, how will that impact based on credible science and correlation across my website into the outcomes that I want, right? So it will probably create another series item solely around this, but being able to kind of take the descriptive data to more predictive and prescriptive. Okay, so kind of the outcomes of Contentsquare examples here, we really, are focusing in on, to optimize and recover customers, prevent risk. And this is really kind of a combination of what we talked about as far as training models using raw data export, allowing that ability to feed on top of that long history of data and being able to have applications that allow you to constantly explore your history, see your future, but also really hone in on some real-time signaling, right, that allows you to actually intervene, and be able to deploy and productionize models that allow for taking that real-time feed and driving some type of interaction with that customer. And we've got, marketing and CS ticketing automation, mark, order, or form and frustration scores, an additional quantitative metric as part of the MPS or review process, intelligent differentiation between frustration and fraud. And if you look at kind of frustrations on the shipping and billing page and basket removing items, automated notifications to DevOps and/or engineering, integration into NPS and review processes, friction with the address field and checkout and personalized bracelet builder, automated notifications to e-commerce team, intelligent analysis to gain a deeper understanding of the friction and prediction modeling to understand hesitation and make better decisions, combining session level frustration score with NPS score and other data, Contentsquare session level frustration score, NPS scoring, and external data sources such as ServiceNow or Zendesk, etc., to build a truly comprehensive net promoter score. And what is kind of coming up next here is, I kind of alluded to this with Jason, is that the field analytics is our next horizon. And we'll kind of get into fraud scoring and other aspects like that. And then you've got the future, like Alexander said, about real-time signaling. So there's a number of things that we're doing within this series together, and we're excited to bring those things to you guys.
Thank you so much, John. Let me share my screen. Actually, you actually.
Sorry, Alexander.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason and John, for this amazing session, and to everyone who joined. Let me start my video again. So we're going to launch a poll now. Go ahead and launch that, Jack. If you're interested in joining our future sessions and would like to set up time with our Contentsquare team to further discuss frustration score, please respond to this poll. I'm going to give you some time to do that. Once again, we have more of these amazing informative sessions coming your way. So please let us know in the poll if you're interested in getting more information. And Maya, can you share the reviews link again, just to highlight? Maya's going to share the link for reviews for those of you who want to leave us a review right after the session. If you're not able to today, you can always go leave us one on G2 or Capterra. So if you're really happy and love Contentsquare, please use that link. We will be following up with you after this session if you let us know you're interested in leaving one. Now, before you log off, I wanted to talk to you about community. You're going to be able to find the recording to this session in community. Maya shared the link in the chat, but you can also meet others who use Contentsquare, get your questions answered, find recordings of our past events, and stay in the know on everything we're doing and upcoming events. So if you're not a part of community yet, please go and join, because we would love to have you become a part of that community to make sure you're getting the full value while you're with Contentsquare. Also want to chat about a few upcoming events that we have coming up. We've got our product education, how to maximize conversions during peak, coming up on September 15th. We would love to have you join us for that. We have our quarterly client club coming up on September 29th. We have our virtual training program coming up on October 6th, 11th, 13th, and the 18th. And then we have CX Circle coming up October 20th. In the center, I've listed our upcoming sessions for this webinar series: field analytics, omni-channel attribution, 360 degrees behavioral analytics, and live signals. So please make sure to join us for those. If you have any questions, please let us know. Send us an email. Let us know in the chat, and I hope you responded to the poll. But it was so awesome to have you all join us today, and we look forward to seeing you in our next session. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you all have an amazing week.